Hi everybody, and welcome back to Sew Along with Jan and part 4 of the Kimberbell December mini quilt. So we're going to be putting together our little mini quilt in this video, and I can't believe it's the last one. So anyway, we're going to put this together. I have all my pieces here, and we'll go through the pieces. Of course, we need our blocks. So here's the 9 blocks that we're going to be putting together for the front. We need the backing. And on my backing, it's 14 by 14. And the backing, I like to put a piece of the SF101 or shaped blacks on the back because when I go to stitch in the ditch, it seems like it doesn't wrinkle then because there's a little more body to the backing. So I always put that on the back. We're going to need a piece. We're going to need our piece for our little sleeve, and I put a sleeve on the back of mine so I can hang it up on my little hanger. And so what I've done here is the sleeve is cut 6 by 12, and what I did here is I measured in a 1/2 inch on the top edge here on each side, and then I trimmed it down from the 1/2 inch mark to the tip. So the top part of my sleeve is 11 inches and the bottom part is now 12. And then I just took my iron and pressed in a 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch, and then I will hem these in a little bit. I didn't hem it so I could show you. So I'll hem those, and then we're going to be folding this in half like this to put it on our the back of our little mini quilt to make a sleeve. So that's the sleeve. I also need a piece of Heat and Bond Ultra. This is the permanent bond, Heat and Bond Ultra Hold. And it's about 3/4 of an inch wide by about 11 inches long. I'm going to make sure when I go to put it on my little sleeve, we're going to use this to adhere the bottom of the sleeve. I'll trim it off so that it's inside of this hem because it doesn't adhere very well through all that bulk. So I'll trim it down, but I made it 3/4 of an inch wide and about 11 inches long. So we need that. And then we also need our binding. So I've already cut my binding and then sewed it together, diagonally. And there's like 3 little pieces of a fat quarter. I had a piece of yardage, so I have 1 width of fabric and a 1/2 a width of fabric for mine. I cut my binding 2 1/4 inches. If you prefer 2 1/2 inch binding, cut it 2 1/2 inches. And then I have already folded it and, pressed it in half here. So it's all ready to go. Just unthreaded my machine, so I was just going to rethread it here. All right, so here's our binding. So there's all of our pieces we need to put our little quilt together. Let me lay these out of the way. We won't need these for a few minutes. And we need our blocks. So let's take a look at on page 22, it tells us how to sew this together. So we're going to sew together the 3 rows first, and then I'm going to press the seams open, and then we're going to sew the 3 rows together. All right, so the first row is going to be the bell, and then the Christmas tree, and then the snowflakes. So we'll start with that. And we're just going to stitch this together with a 1/4 inch seam. Now I just have some kind of gray thread in. I thought it would be kind of neutral, so it should be okay. And I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch piecing stitch on my machine. It's on the Q tab. Most of the Brother Baby Lock machines that have a touchscreen have a Q tab, and it's the piecing stitch Q02. So what it does is it moves the needle to the right so that I can leave the J foot on, and then I can run the fabric right along the edge, the right-hand edge of the J foot. Okay, so let's sew these 3 together. We're going to sew our 3 rows together, and then we'll press, and then we'll sew them all together. So, all right, so the second one's going to be the tree. So let's put the tree here. And I'm going to use my 1/4 inch seam. So give me a second. I'm going to grab a pin here. It's nice to hold them together a little bit. So we're going to do our 1/4 inch seam. Again, I'm just using kind of a gray cotton thread in my needle and bobbin, so Pima cotton, and we're going to do our 1/4 inch seam. And we'll just sew all 3 of our rows together. Take a little break to press, and then we'll come back and sew all 3 rows together to make it one. All right. There's one, and then the next one is going to be the snowflakes. So we'll lay this down, and then it's going to be the snowflakes. Make sure I get the snowflake the right side up. I think this one was on the left, pink one. Okay. So we'll sew these together. It's always so exciting to get to put it together. It just totally looks different than just looking at the blocks, doesn't it? It's amazing when you get it put together how different it looks. This one's really cute. I really have enjoyed these blocks. They've been easy and fun, gone very quickly. I also like the November one. There weren't too many blocks in it either, and it was very fun to do. All right, so we're going to stitch our 1/4 inch seam again. And cut. Let's see here. So we got our first row. So here's our first row. Okay. So I'm just going to lay that aside for a minute. We'll do the other rows. So the second row is going to start with the candy canes and then the Merry Mail. So we're going to put these 2 together. Make sure I get them right side up here. These 2. Put a pin in there. And then I think it's the, oh yeah, it's the Santa hat in the second row. It's always nice to get to this point. I love putting them together. It's just nice to get them all done, and they look so cute. This one did have quite a lot of blocks in it though, didn't it? Some of them did. There was a couple of them that, I think there was even 1 or 2 that had 10 blocks, because like there was some filler blocks in them. Okay, so there's the first 2 blocks, and then the third block is going to be the Santa hat. So we'll put the Santa hat over here. Get that one in. Make sure I got everything right side up here. I've been known to do that when I'm putting quilts or stuff together, that I put one in upside down, so make sure I'm checking. All right, we'll do this one. Okay. And down for the 1/4 inch seam. And there's our second row. All right, take that out, look. There's our second row. So this one had 2 red ones in the corners. So they kind of did they did 2 of every block, but they kind of put them in different places. So this one had 2 red ones in it. Okay, and then the third row is going to be the little holly berries. The first one's the holly berries. I'm just looking at the book here, and then the presents. So the present's going to be in the middle here. So we'll put these 2 together. Get them all lined up. Do a 1/4 inch seam, and then the last one is a little ornament. All right, get this one done. I'm just tying off at the beginning and the end. Sometimes these are kind of thick, and it's easier if you tie off a little bit. Okay, so there's the first 2, and then the third one is the ornament, like that. Okay, get this one lined up. Go. Sunday's always my day of chores at home, so I've been doing laundry, and I'm doing dishes, and I've been making videos. Sunday's my chore day. This is a Sunday, and I spend a lot of Sundays at home doing this kind of stuff. So there's our third row. So I'm going to get up. I'll just pause the camera for a minute. I'm going to get up, and I'm going to open my seams. I'm going to take my iron and open my seams out, because I like to have them flat. It's a lot easier to get them lined up like this. So I'm going to open them up like this, and then I'll be right back, and we'll put our 3 rows together. Okay, so I've got my 3 rows all pressed. I've got my seams pressed open. Okay, and we're going to put the 3 rows together. So the first 2 rows are these two. So we're going to put this row and this row together first. So this one's going to go together like this. And then we want to make sure that we get our little seams lined up here. And I always like to put a pin on both sides of those because everything scoots on me, it seems like, if I don't. So we're going to put some pins in there on either side just to hold everything in place. Go. And then we'll stitch this row on. This one's going to go together pretty quickly. It does have quite a few blocks, but they're all pretty quick to put together. So, all right, let me get this going here. Get it lined up. We're still doing our 1/4 inch seam with Q02. You can use a piecing foot if you prefer. I don't use a piecing foot too much anymore. I like this because I often have to zigzag fairly soon. Like we'll be zigzagging, you know, the binding on and stuff. So I usually like to use my J foot because then I don't have to change it when I'm trying to zigzag. So depends on what you like. All right. So we're going to go ahead and tie off at this end, and then we'll do the last row. And again, we'll have to press. Get these pins out of here. We'll need those again. Okay, so here's the first, whoops, turn it right side up, Jan. There we go. So there's the first 2 rows. Those look pretty good. And I always get a little seam, my seam a little off, but it's not too bad. Okay, so then we're going to do the 3rd row. So the 3rd row is going to be, let's see, like this. So this is going to be the 3rd row here. So like that, I thought it was cool how they did it. So like there's a green, a light green and a light green, and a red and a red, and a dark green and a dark green, and the pink and the pink. So they mixed them up like that. I thought that was neat. Okay, so I'll put this one on. See if I can do a little better job of getting my corner lined up. I don't always do very well with the corners here. I just finished a quilt top. I haven't pieced a quilt top for a long time. I had a quilt top that I had started, oh golly, a long time ago. I mean, at least 7 or 8 years ago, I started this quilt top, and I finished it maybe a couple of weeks ago. It was really nice to get it done. I haven't pieced for a long time. I mean, I kind of piece when I'm doing this kind of stuff, but not really. And so it was fun to get that done. And it's a big quilt. It was like 84 by 84, I think. So, and it's all ready to be quilted now. All right. So we're going to get this one all lined up with the 1/4 inch seam. And we'll sew this row on. So this is a pretty, okay, make sure we're all lined up here. A lot of people ask me about the pins. So I do drive over only these pins. And if you hear nothing else about the pins, do not do this with normal pins. These pins are magic pins. They're called magic pins. They are extra fine patchwork, and they're incredibly soft. So that's the only reason I ever drive over a pin. I never do any other pins. So if you have other pins besides these, do not drive over them. But these magic pins are wonderful because I often have trouble keeping my seams lined up, and so I like to be able to leave a pin in if I need to. And these, I have hit them before, yes, but they're very, very, very soft. So I'll watch, see how soft these are? I can just bend them. They're so, so soft. So if you hit one of those, it's not going to hurt your machine. And I throw away a lot of pins. So you can see these are pretty bent after putting them in those thick seams. So I'll just probably throw those 4 pins away. Okay, so then here is our little top. Oh my gosh, isn't that cute? So I'm going to go press those seams open also, and then I'll show you how we're going to put the back on. So I'll be right back after doing my pressing. Okay, there's our little top. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. So it's all nice and flat. I have all the seams open. So now we're going to put the back on. So I normally don't do this on my sewing machine, but I'm just going to show you how to do this, you know, with a couple of pins. Now I pin based. So I'm going to turn my backing. This is my backing. This is the pretty side, and this is the side with the shape flex. So we're going to put the shape flex side up with the pretty side down. And then, whoops, looks like I got a bunch of lint in here. And then I'm going to kind of center my little top on this backing here. Try to get it, you know, as centered as you can. You should have an inch or so all the way around. So, all right. So I'm going to put that on like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my basting pins and I'm just going to put a couple of basting pins in each block so that they will not move around. And I like to try to keep the pins away from the seams if I can, because then when I go to stitch in the ditch, I don't touch my pins. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a couple pins in each one of these blocks through the backing to hold it together. And then I'll be back in a moment. I like to lay this on my cutting table to do that. And then I'll be back in a moment and we'll do the stitching in the ditch and we'll go around the outside edge to hold it all together so we can put the binding on. Okay, so I'm all ready for the stitching in the ditch. We're just going to stitch down these two seam lines and these two seam lines. And I have changed over to my Mettler Transpill monofilament. I like to use monofilament for stitching in the ditch. I don't think it shows as much. So I do have that in my needle and in my bobbin. And I'm having a little trouble finding the end. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to leave my J foot on and I'm going to move my needle to the center position because we were using it on the 1/4 inch piecing stitch. And I'm going to go to Q01, which puts my needle back in the middle position. And there's a little notch on this foot, this J foot, that I can run right down the middle of that ditch. Now they also make like a stitch in the ditch foot. You can use that if that works better for you. I focus on that little notch. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to switch my length of my stitch up to 3.0, make it a little bit longer because we're going through a little bulk here. And I'm just going to stitch down through that seam with my monofilament. So we're going to do those 4 seams just to hold our back on. It's going through the backing and the top. Just going to hold everything together. A second here. That's why I like to put my pins away so I don't have to move the pins when I'm stitching. This one's going to be a little close though. Okay, it's a little bit close there. I got it. Got past it. But the monofilament works really well, especially if you've got a lot of different colors of fabric. So I usually use monofilament when I do stitching in the ditch. Second, I'm stuck back here. All right, so we're going to tie off down here. See if I can get I need to get my elbow a little bit lower, so if I move the camera a little bit, maybe I can get my elbow over it. All right, so we'll do this side. Do the same thing. Make sure my thread's under my foot there so it won't come unthreaded. I'm going to tie it off. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so cute. Looking forward to getting this one done. I've still got the October one up. It's still October. I'd like to leave it up until Halloween is this coming week. So I don't even know what day it is. What is today? I'll look at it's 27th of October today. So I usually try to do these around the 1st of November. So I get my pins stuck. I'm going to take this one out. It's getting stuck on the little wheelie bar button back there. There we go. Let's take that one out. All right, now I can get back over there. And so I want to leave it up through Halloween so that I'll put up the little November one we did last month. It's the one with all the cute little gray and white check felt on it. It was kind of neat. So I'm anxious to put that one up. All right, we'll cut that one, and then we're going to do the other two. So I'm just going to flip it over here, and we'll do these two. Let's see here. Getting pretty close to being out of thread. I hope I can make it through. I'm not sure I will. I may have to wind some more bobbin thread. I don't wind very much monofilament at a time, about 1/4 of a bobbin, because it gets tight really quickly and it kind of splies your bobbin. So I don't wind very much, and I also wind it very slowly when I use monofilament in the bobbin. But this transfill, I've used a lot of different monofilaments. This works so well, and they make a smoke color if you need something like for, you know, navy blue or black fabrics, and they make that too. And it's really nice because it's softer, and it isn't so stiff, and it works well in the bobbin. Some monofilaments just do not work well in the bobbin at all, but this one works fine. Okay, so there's that. So see, here's 3 of our little seams there. So we're going to turn it over and do one more. Get it all lined up, and I'm using that little notch in the middle of my J-foot to help me stay straight. And again, if you like those, the stitch in the ditch foot, it has like a little bar that goes down the middle. That works better for you. Use that. I've always just used this because I focus on that notch when I stitch straight. Make sure I don't get caught on these pins. I had a little trouble with one of the pins in the last row. So I'm getting pretty close here. Okay. All right, there is our monofilament done. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just switch over to my white thread, because I know my monofilament is just about empty. But see, there's our little stitching in the ditch done for the backing, and I think I'm just going to switch over to some white thread now. I know my monofilament is just about gone on the bobbin, so it won't go all the way around. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my white thread back in. I'm going to use white thread to put the binding on, so I'll just put the white thread back in right now. So give me a second here to switch the thread out. We've got white bobbin thread too, so we can use that around the outside edge. And then I know I won't run out, because I know I'm going to run out about halfway around. That's usually the story of my life, you know, is to run out of bobbin thread. And sometimes the monofilament doesn't like register very well with the bobbin sensor, so it won't stop sometimes with that clear stuff. Okay, so then we're going to just do a little top stitch around the outside edge just to hold the edges together. And I'm going to leave my needle in the center, but this time we're going to do like a little top stitch. So there's 2 notches actually on this foot. So I'm going to put the fabric along the one there's one in the center that we've been using, but then the one on the right hand side is about 1/8 of an inch away. So I'm going to put the edge of the fabric along that notch, and it's right about where the zigzag hole is on the right. I'm going to put that on there, and then we'll sew about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now I'm just going to use that little notch to help me do this little top stitch. So when I do top stitching, like on clothes and stuff, that's how I always do it too. I use that little notch to help me. I don't know if that's what it's for or not. Whoops, here, just a second. I ran into the back of the cabinet. Got my 1/8 inch a little off, but it'll be fine. All right, so we're going to go down here and stop, and then we're going to turn the corner, go all the way around. Can you see my little zigzag over here? Whoops, it hit the edge of the cabinet and did a little zigzag, but it'll be fine. All right, so we're going to do all 4 sides just to hold everything together nicely, so when we go to put the binding on, we don't have things flopping around on us. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to I didn't used to do this, and when I every now and then I'd like miss the whole back piece or the whole front piece of the while I was putting the binding on, because it like flipped over on me. So I find that it works better if I do this top stitch this all down. But I like to stay at about 1/8 of an inch, because then it is then it second here, I got to see where I'm going. If I stay at 1/8 of an inch, it won't show in my seam for my binding, because that's going to be a 1/4 inch seam. All right, so we're going to go all the way around here. Okay. And then one more side. And you can also do this with the monofilament. I often do in the videos, but I just knew I was going to run out of thread, so I thought, well, might as well put the white in now. Doesn't matter, it's not going to show. It's going to be under the binding. Oops, second here, I'm stuck again. All right, so that is all nicely top stitched down all the way around the outside of our little quilt. So now I'm going to take this over to my table, my cutting table, and I'm going to take all the pins out, and then I'm going to trim my edges so that my backing and my top are all nicely even. So I'll just take my rotary cutter and I'll trim my top off, or my backing off, so it matches the top, and then we're going to be ready to put the binding on. I'll be right back. Okay, so here's our little top all trimmed down, the back. It's all ready now to have some binding on it. So the first thing I did also while I had the camera shut off, I went ahead and hemmed my edges of my little sleeve here. So you can see that it's narrower on one end than the other. And then I folded it in half and pressed it nicely. And then I pressed my piece of Heat and Bond Ultra onto where the fold was. And that's going to be the bottom of the sleeve. So the sleeve will go on like this. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put the sleeve on first, because we need to have this inside of our binding. So I'm just going to fold this in half and find the center of my sleeve. Let's see if I can get it pinned here. There we go. So I'll find the center of my little sleeve, and then we're going to turn our little quilt over, and we're going to put the sleeve in the center here. So it's going to be centered. There's no center seam this time, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. That looks about right. So we're going to eyeball it there. I might need to fold it because it didn't look quite right. So let's see if I can find the center here. I'll mark it with a pin. There we go. And we'll put the sleeve in the center of the top. So make sure I got the top here. I've done that before. Put it on upside down, you know. All right, so then the not the steam seam, the Heat Bond Ultra is going to be on towards the back. Okay. The fold is at the bottom. And then we're going to line those pins up and get it all pinned on here. So this will be up inside of our binding. Okay. Now I am going to put a couple pins down here too, so that this little thing won't flip up on me. Sometimes they like to try to flip up a little bit when you're sewing on them. So I thought I'd stick a couple pins down here in the corners if I can get it in there. Yep. Keep it from flipping up on me in case it does. There we go. Okay. So now that we're going to talk about binding. So I have a document that I will link in the description below called Bind Aid, and this is how I learned how to do binding. But I do binding a little differently now. I do binding with the sewing machine. I don't hand stitch anything. If you like to hand stitch your binding on, you'll do the same thing at the beginning that I'm going to do, but you will put your binding on the front. If you're going to hand stitch it to the back, you will put it on the front of the mini quilt. I'm going to machine stitch mine on, so we're going to put the binding on the back in this video. So we're going to be putting the binding on the back instead of the front, and I'm going to bring it to the front to stitch it down. All right, so I'm going to use this, let's see if I got a selvage edge on the bottom here. Let me trim this little selvage edge off. We're going to use this little red and white polka dot. It was supposed to be some more of that cute little holly berry, but I didn't have enough of that to do binding. So I had this little red and white polka dot. So I thought, well, that'll be cute. So we'll put this on. And we're going to start, I'm going to switch back to my Q02 so that my needle is, I'm at the 1/4 inch piecing position. And we're going to start down here at the bottom, make sure I got everything on here right. I always start, before I start binding, I always check that I didn't flip something upside down. Okay. Then we're going to line up our raw edges, and I'm going to start so I leave a little tail. You want to leave a little tail. And I'm just going to start like real close to the end here so that it's open for quite a few inches. It gives us a little more wiggle room. I'm just going to tie this off, and it gives us a little more wiggle room when we go to get the little flip at the end and put it together. So, all right, so I'm going to stop about 1/4 inch from the end here. I can see where it is. I'm just going to eyeball it. If you want to measure with and put a pin in there, by all means do that. I just kind of eyeball it and stop about 1/4 inch from the end of my little mini quilt. And you can also kind of tell, you know, because you got that stitching there for the top stitching. Okay, so then I'm going to turn it. I'm going to take my binding and I'm going to line it up with my corner at a 45-degree angle, like this. Line it up with my corner up here. And then my raw edges are going to be together. So I'm going to get a nice 45-degree fold. I'm going to bring it straight down. And this is all on Bind Aid. This is how I learned to do the binding. I had a friend give that to me years and years ago so I could learn how to do binding, and it really helped me. So then I'm going to line up all my raw edges again, and we're going to sew down the side. So we're going to start again. We're going to tie off, drop my needle, we're going to tie off here on the very edge. Get all the raw edges lined up, and then we're going to go up this side. 1/4 inch seam. Okay, a second here, I got to get this straightened up. And you notice I'm not pinning any of this. You don't really need to pin your binding. We will do a little bit of pinning when we flip it over to stitch it down, but not very much. Okay, and we're getting up here to the top, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to see where my edge is, and I'm going to stop 1/4 inch from the edge. Just going to eyeball it. I think that's about right. Tie off and cut, and then we're going to turn it again. Do this side. So here's the side. So we're going to do the same thing. There's my corner. I'm going to get that corner up there. Nice 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to bring it straight down and line up all my raw edges again. There we go. And then we'll do the same thing. I'm going to tie off at the end, make a nice little knot there in the end so it won't come apart. And then this time we're going to be sewing into our little sleeve also. So I'll just get everything lined up. And I will probably leave those pins in there so things won't flip on me. Okay. All right, so we'll do our 1/4 inch seam along here. Get a hold of everything. I can do binding pretty quickly now. These don't take too long. They're real small, but I've gotten so I can do binding pretty quickly now. But I've done a lot, and you just have to practice. So when I do it when I use the sewing machine like this, I started using the machine, putting binding down by machine because I do so many samples. And it was taking me too long to hand stitch things, and I don't really enjoy hand stitching. Some people really like it, so if you like it, just hand stitch it on. I just don't enjoy hand stitching, and I'm also not very good at it. my grandmother was such a beautiful hand stitcher, and I think it's because I'm left-handed. It was very hard for her to teach me to hand sew, and so my hand stitching is not the greatest. So I've always liked to do everything with the machine that I could. Okay, we're going to do our 45-degree angle, brought the raw edges back down together and around this other corner. Goes pretty quickly. Okay. I finally stopped, or I finally started on the right end of my binding because the seam is here in the middle somewhere instead of in my corner. I always seem to start on the short piece, and I always get a seam right in the corner with these little mini quilts because they're like, they're so short, and that just happened to be right in the corner where you don't want them, All right, so I'm going to stop 1/4 of an inch from the end here. Okay, and we're going to tie off and cut, and then we're going to go around the corner to our nice 45-degree angle again. Get it all beautiful, and then come straight down and get all of our edges meeting. And then I'm not going to go around the corner too far, just maybe a couple of inches. So we have plenty to work with when we're turning our little flip here. So this is the little flip part that always is hard. And after I got the hang of it, I do real well with it. All right, so we're just going to stop about right there, and then we're going to tie off. All right, so now we're ready we need our two ends to meet so that it's continuous. So I'm going to lay this down here like this. We started on this end, so I'm going to take this end that we started on your left. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it at a 45-degree angle like this, and just lay it down. And then this one, oops, actually we're going to have to cut it off first. Sorry. We have to cut it off first. So I'm going to take this is the end that we just finished, and I'm going to lay this underneath this edge, and I'm going to just overlap those. And since I'm doing 2 1/4 inch binding, I want mine to overlap 2 1/4 inches. If you're doing 2 1/2 inch binding, you would want it to overlap 2 1/2 inches. So I'm going to measure to 2 1/4, since it's 2 1/4 inch binding. And I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put it in the back piece of the binding here, right there. And then I'll put it in just to make sure we got it right. And then I'll remeasure, because we want this to overlap. And the measurement needs to be exact. So I'm going to measure it 2 1/4 inches. That looks pretty good. Okay. So then I'm going to take this. This is the part where we ended. I got a little bit of leftover here. I'm just going to fold this in half on the pin, and we're going to cut it off. The scissors here and cut it off. Okay. So that little piece we don't need. So here's the part where we start. We ended here. That's the part I just cut off, okay? And this is the part that we started with. So this part, again, I got a little ahead of myself earlier. This part here, we're going to take it and turn it at a 45-degree angle here on the left, okay? And then the piece that we just cut off, we're going to open it up. If I can get it to open, we're going to open it up and lay it flat. And this is the right side of the binding. I'm just going to lay it flat against the back of the little mini quilt like that. Then I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to continue in the same direction while opening it up. So I've got my thumb in here. See, I just got it open, and I'm going to continue in the same direction. I'm just going to keep going like this, and it's going to look weird and twisty. And you're going to open this up as you're doing this, and then these two corners are going to go together. So your fold lines are going to be perpendicular to each other. So there's going to be one going, this way and one going this way, okay? So you're going to have like an X in the middle with your seams that you pressed into your binding. So I'm going to put 3 pins in here. And like I said, when I got Bind Aid, it had really good pictures of this part. This was the part that I struggled with, was getting this part done. And after seeing that, all the pictures were very clear then, so I understood how to do this. So if you've never seen that document, it's going to be listed in the description below, so you can take a look at it, see if that'll help you. Okay, so I'm going to take a marking pen, and And I want to know where my seams are, or my corners are here. So if we fold this in half a little bit, we can get to it. Okay. So here's one corner. We're going to stitch this way. So here's one corner right here. And then this one we can see, but I'll just mark it because it gives me more visual. Okay. And I'm going to put my needle back into the Q01 center needle position, because we're going to stitch across the end of this binding. So I'm just going to fold this in half so I can get it to lay flat for me. This is always the tough part if you don't leave enough tail, because then it doesn't lay flat, and this one's a little hard because it's being contrary. All right, so let's get this one started. So here's my mark that I made on this side. Okay, make sure it's all nice and flat for you. And then we're going to stitch across to the other side. Now you can mark all the way across if you want to. I've gotten so I can eyeball it. It's not too far. So if you need to mark it all the way across with the mark, just draw a line with the ruler. There we go. So I'm just going to go all the way to the other end and cut it off. All right. So if you're worried that you didn't do it correctly, you can take your pins out, but don't cut anything until after you've laid it down, and it should lay down flat like that. So that is the goal. So mine does. So I'm going to go ahead and take this little piece of bulk out, and we will just open that little seam with I just usually finger press it open. This little seam right here. If I can get a hold of it here. Just finger press it open. There we go. And then we're ready to finish the binding. So I'm going to lay this down. And I do like to pin this binding because sometimes I have to, just bring in a little fullness. It's sometimes, if I didn't measure quite accurately, but this one's laying pretty flat. So, but I like to pin it, and then I can kind of adjust the fullness if I need to. But usually it's pretty good. Looks like this one's going to lay nice and flat. So put a few pins in here. We're going to go back to Q02 on the sewing machine so that we can do our 1/4 inch seam and finish our seam. So let me get back to Q02. Put the needle over. Okay, and we'll finish the bottom of the seam here. And the binding will be on, and then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to do all the beautiful corners. And we're going to sew it on with the sewing machine. I use a zigzag stitch to sew my binding on with. You can use a straight stitch too. I find that I don't do as well with a straight stitch. I have a hard time keeping everything looking nice and neat, and with the zigzag I don't have any trouble. So I don't know why. But if the straight stitch works better for you, do a straight stitch. Okay. All right, so let's take these pins out. Oops. Well, one's on the floor now. I spent a lot of time picking up pins off the floor. All right. So then the next step to this little procedure, see it's all one piece now, is to, and this is the big trick when you're doing machine binding. Like when we do hand binding, we would not press anything. We would just turn it over to the back and stitch it down. Now, when you do machine binding, though, you really need to press this on the back. So we need a very crisp seam all the way around this, because that's going to help us to bring our binding down and have it match, the front and the back match nicely. So I'm going to take this to my ironing board, and I am going to press this open on the back and have a very crisp seam here before we start doing the zigzagging on the front. So I'll be right back after I get my pressing done. Okay, so I've got it all pressed, and now the next thing is to make our beautiful corners on the front, because we want the corners to be as beautiful on the front as they are on the back. So what I've done is on each corner I take a clover clip on each side of the corner. Okay, so you'll need 8 clips. I even do this when I do the great big quilts. I only use 8 clips, one on each side of the corner. And then I'm going to put a pin, and I'll show you how to do the pinning on the corner. So here's my last corner to do. I've got the other 3 done, so you wouldn't have to sit here and watch me make corners. And I'm going to put the binding, pull the binding down, the fold of the binding right down to the stitching line that we made when we stitched it on. And I'm going to put a clover clip on each side of the corner. So I'm just going to fold this down right to that line and put a clover clip and leave a little space so that you can, you can work with it a little bit here in the corner. Okay, let me move this one down a little bit. And then I'm going to grab a pin, stick it here, and I'm going to push up on the right hand side of the binding. I'm going to push it right up with my thumb, right up into the corner, right along that line, that stitching line, right up, and I'm going to make a 45-degree angle at the top here. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it down, get my pin ready. I'm going to pull it down to the other side of the line, the stitching line, and I'm going to put the pin where they intersect right there in the center. I'm just going to put the pin in there, and I'm going to poke it out the corner. And then you have that perfect, you push it up, 45-degree angle, bring it down, and then where they meet here in the corner, there's your beautiful corner. And you want to leave those pins in there because they're going to help us keep everything lined up. Okay, so now we're ready for stitching. So I did that to all 4 of my corners. Here's all my corners. The top ones are a little harder because, we got a little bit of extra bulk in there because of our little sleeve, but they work fine. So here's all my corners. Okay, so we want those to stay nice and beautiful for us. All right, so now to do the binding with the machine. So what I do, we're going to go over here. I have a stitch. A lot of the machines have saving ability, and I'm going to go back over here to my number 1 tab, which is just my regular zigzags and stuff. And I have 1-10 that I always leave as my binding zigzag. So I have it saved in here. I want the width to be 2.0 and the length to be 1.4. So it's not too long, but it's very, very narrow. Okay, so I have this saved in my machine on 1-10 so that when I hit that one, I know that it's going to be my binding setting, so I don't have to reset it up every time. So that's kind of cool. So 2.0 for the width, 1.4 for the length. Now I am just going to leave my white thread in here since my binding's white. There is a little bit of red on it, but I think the white will work fine. So this is the trick with the binding. We're not going to start on a corner. You want to start kind of in the middle somewhere. So I'm going to start, just kind of in the middle here on the bottom. And I'm going to bring my binding around to the stitching line. That's the line we stitched it on. And I'm going to put the fold right on that line. And I'm going to put my foot down on my binding. So then remember that little notch we used earlier for the stitching in the ditch. It's right here. I want that notch right on the fold, running right along the fold of my binding here. Okay, so then this is the trick. I'm going to put my needle down and I'm going to tie off. The right side zig is going to be on the binding. The left side zag is going to be just off the binding. And that is the trick. And what will happen then is when you turn it over, it'll be nicely lined up on the back. So the right hand zig is on the binding and the left hand zag. Just a second here, I'm catching on my embroidery unit. I don't usually take my embroidery unit off to sew, and this is just the wrong size. It comes up and it hits the embroidery unit. Okay, so I'm lining it all up. So the right hand zig is on the binding and the left hand zag is off the binding. When I get close enough, I'll take the little clips out. Just getting everything lined up. And if you need to use a walking foot to do this, these machines, these Brother machines, really, really feed well. I normally don't have to use a walking foot. If you feel more comfortable using a walking foot, do that. I have a little harder time seeing through my walking foot. There is an open toe, which is really nice, that I can't see. Now, I'm getting close to this corner, I want to leave that pin in, but I am going to pull it back so I don't hit the top of it. And we're going to zigzag into the corner. Okay, we're going to zigzag into the corner. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. We're going to turn around the corner, and then I'm going to see how I did. Now, I did very well this time, because the trick is when we turn around, we want that little notch in the center to be right along the edge of our binding, which mine is. I actually did pretty well this first time, so that's pretty good. It won't happen again probably, but all right, so we're going to get this all lined up, and we're going to go out of the corner, doing the same thing. I'm just going to leave that pin in there until I'm done. And then we'll get it all lined up. Bring your binding right up to the stitching line. And we're just going to zigzag down the side. Okay. So I've learned when I learned to do this binding, I kind of watched a lot of videos and just did and I altered some stitch lengths and widths to make it easier for me. So this is what worked for me, and it may take that with you as well. So just, experiment a little bit, but I find that I do pretty well. The trick is you want to use very matchy thread or monofilament. Monofilament works very well with this. This is mostly white, so I just went ahead with white thread. But you could have also used monofilament. That would have worked well for this. Okay, I'm trying to get this all lined up. Right hand zig is on the fabric. Left hand zag is off the fabric. And then when I get close to the corner, I'm going to pull back a little bit with my fingernail so that I can straighten that out along my stitching line. So I think I'm going to have to pull my pin out just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we're going to sew into the corner. And then let's see how I did with this corner. Oh my gosh, look, I did it again. That's amazing. So I got my you want your notch to go right down along the edge of your binding again. Okay, so I'm going to take another little clover clip out. Okay, and then we're going to come out of this corner. Right hand zig is on the binding. The left hand zag is just off the binding. I mean, it's like one stitch, like just off. And you don't want and you could do even a narrower zigzag if you can hit it. I experimented with some narrower zigzags, and I just couldn't hit it well enough. So the 2.0 worked the best for me. It depends on, and like I said, if you use matchy thread, like I normally have very matching thread, you really, I mean, you can see it there, but it's not obnoxious or obtrusive or anything. It looks fine, and I always use very matchy thread. So like, I remember one of the first quilts I ever did with this way, because I was giving it to a child, and I knew it was going to get washed and used. It had black binding, so I just used black thread, and you really couldn't even see the zigzagging. So, all right, so we're getting close to another corner here. Zigzagging into the corner. I'm going to pull back a little bit to straighten that out. Don't want to see my white line there, so I'll push it over a little bit. There we go. Zigzag into the corner. Now this time I'm purposely going to go a little too far because I want to show you how to fix it. Sometimes you have to fix it. I've been lucky so far. So I can see my notch is way to the right this time. And so to fix that, if that happens to you, just put your foot down, raise your needle, and then just slide over just a little bit and put the notch on the edge of your binding and put your needle back down. So if that happens, it's very easy to fix, and it shows very little on the back, so you won't really see it at all. So okay, I'm going to get this all lined back up again. Okay, and then we're going to zigzag out of that corner. There we go. Okay, we're almost down to this one. Might as well just leave the camera running if you don't mind watching me put binding on. We're almost done now. Might as well just leave it on, right? Okay. Sometimes I turn off the camera while I go around a side or two, but a lot of people like to watch me put the binding on because they've never tried binding this way before, and it does work quite well. So give it a try. I just do so many samples that to hand stitch everything down. I used to hand stitch everything, and my friend Judy liked to help me hand stitch like quilts. I'll still hand stitch things occasionally, but I just don't enjoy hand stitching very much. So I usually like to do everything with the sewing machine I can. All right, so we're going to go down to the next one here. A second here, got to get a hold of it. Pull that pin back a little bit. I think this is the last corner, guys. Okay, so we're going to take a stitch or two in there. I'm going to turn the corner. See how I did on this? Oh, I did pretty well on this one too. So I won't have to do that. Okay, so now I like to put a pin where I started, because I started right here. You don't want to go over too many stitches. With the zigzag, you can kind of see it. So I like to basically stop right where I started. So I'm just going to put a pin there so that I can really see it and get rid of my little tail here. Get rid of this one. Get everything straight again, and then come out of this corner. And we're almost done. I've gotten so I can zigzag these pretty quick now. You know, if you can't zigzag this fast. And sometimes I got to go fetch my glasses, but this is white, so I can actually see it without my glasses. All right, so we're just about there. And I'm going to make sure that I stop right where I started. And I'm going to tie it off. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. I like the little polka dots. I wasn't sure if I was going to like the polka dots, but that was the only thing I had that was similar. Look at there. Let's get rid of our little tail here. So there's our little quilt. Got a couple little things to do. So I'll talk you through that, and then I'll go do those things, and then I will put it in the stand so you can see the final little quilt of this whole series. My gosh, we've done all 12 of these. Can you believe it? I think I started last December because I did one like after Christmas. I think I did the first one after Christmas. So, all right. So there's our little mini quilt. Now the couple things we need to do on the back. I'm going to take these pins out too. And I'm going to go over to my ironing table again, and I'm going to pull my paper off of my heat and bond, and I'm going to bond this down to the back of the quilt. But what I found is that because of this, you know, where these hems are, it doesn't like to stick too well. So what I do now is I just take a hand needle and some thread, and I'm just going to put a knot, a little stitch in each corner just to hold this down because of this thicker part, and then the rest of it stays very nicely sealed to the back of the quilt, but these little corners didn't want to, so I just put a little stitch in those. So I'm going to go do that off camera, and then I'll be right back to show you the finished product. Okay, so there's my little mini quilt. I took the two little stitches on the ends of the sleeve, and it's already in the frame. So this was so much fun. This was really a fun one, and it was very simple. All the blocks went very quickly, and they were easy. So thank you so much for joining me for this whole series of Kimberbell Mini Quilts. This is the last one. And thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up on YouTube because it really helps my channel. My channel's called Sew Along with Jan. And if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. It's free. And that way you'll get all the different videos that are coming up. I've got more videos coming yet this month, and we'll probably be doing some things in December. So we'll be seeing, haven't decided on everything I've got November figured out, but not December yet. So, but thank you so much for joining me. Also, I have a Facebook group called Sew Along with Jan, and if you haven't come and join us there too. If you like to do Facebook, we do all kinds of fun things and show our projects and ask questions there. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the Kimberbell Mini Quilts. I really enjoyed them, and now I have something to put in my little frame here every month of the year. Thanks so much, and have a great day.